Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby to get ourselves a treat.
Hello and welcome to Movies vs. Capitalism, an anti-capitalist movie podcast. This is Frank.
And this is Rivka. And we are coming to you right before the holidays.
The holiday spirit is amongst us. Among us? Amongst us. I think it's either is acceptable.
I think either is good. Are you feeling holiday-y?
You know, I was at a bar. I was at a bar over the weekend, and they had all their Christmas lights and holiday decorations up, and I've had a few moments in establishments like this where there is something really nice. There's something nice and warm and cozy about, I don't know, just having some decorations up.
It's extra cozy this year. I feel like New York is here for it this year. Like, just I've been seeing more lights, more sparkle, more cozy.
New York goes hard in the paint for Christmas, specifically.
No snow yet, but okay.
No, we haven't had fucking snow in December, and who even knows how long. But I was traveling back into the city this past Saturday, and this has now happened to me twice, 2 years in a row, where I have been traveling back to New York City on a Saturday in December, and I emerge from Penn Station surrounded by fucking drunk assholes from New Jersey dressed as Santa Claus. Because it was SantaCon.
SantaCon.
Mm-hmm. That was a bit annoying, but also there's like a fun, like, gross novelty spectacle to it. So it was kind of like watching. There were already people, some in Penn Station, that were just hammered. I was like, damn, a Santa might freeze tonight. You know?
It's such a strange. I don't understand it.
Yeah, I was never one for binge drinking. That was never one of my activities of choice.
I'm not physically made for it either. It's just not something I'm capable of. Mm-hmm. Nor would I do it dressed as Santa. So, like, what the fuck?
No.
Anyways, we have two things we want to touch on briefly, and then we're gonna get into our last holiday duet of the season. But the first is just touching base on the Luigi of it all, because this is continuing, and I believe it'll probably continue into the new year. So we'll chat with you when we're back.
Luigi's going to be on our feeds for the next several months, if not year. I don't know how long this trial is going to take, but yes, continue.
I already saw like a post where some entertainment company was like, securing the rights to the documentary about it. I'm like, Jesus, fucking give it a fucking beat. And who's gonna watch it? I don't want to watch your documentary. I have my TikTok sleuths. Like, get out of here. Anyways, there was a New York Times op-ed, which I can't even get the full title of because they want me to pay for it. It's behind a paywall, but let's see if I can do this. Okay, I'm gonna do it. Do it fast for y'all. United Health Group CEO: the healthcare system is flawed. Let's fix it. It was an op-ed from none other than the CEO of United Healthcare, basically saying absolutely nothing other than, yeah, we know.
Yeah, I skimmed through it and it was basically, yeah, we know. But listen, our whole thing is providing healthcare to people. And we really want to do that. And we want to work with lawmakers and consumers and everything to provide the best possible healthcare.
It's such gaslighting.
First of all, no, you fucking don't. You don't provide shit for people. You literally do not provide healthcare. Your whole function is to gatekeep healthcare. Mm-mm. You are rentiers of healthcare.
Nor should you. Nor do I want anyone who has a profit-bearing interest of the capitalist class to be in charge of my goddamn healthcare. Because you, as we know, as we'll talk about in the film today, as we've seen from particularly in all these Christmas movies, it's like, even if you want to pose as Mr. Nice Guy Capitalist, you are serving profit. That is the system. You would not be a capitalist if you did not. That is how it fucking works.
When your business is for profit, the number one priority is profit. And then whatever your business is secondary. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Especially for a business this large with Wall Street investors that has to answer to shareholders, that has to do constant growth quarter over quarter. Profit is number one, and then anything else your business does is secondary.
And the fucking New York Times, like...
The New York Times has been on one. They also posted that op-ed that was like, Brian Thompson, not Luigi, is the real working class hero. Like, God, just like carrying water for these ghouls.
God, shut up. Like, at least just shut up. Like, what?
I would buy the whole like we're just telling both sides. We're just doing journalism. We're telling both sides.
It's op-ed, baby.
But the closest thing I saw them doing that covered at all the widespread public outpouring of support for Luigi and hatred to the health insurance agency, to the health insurance industry. The closest thing I saw them get to was 3 columnists debate about the lionization of Luigi Mangione.
Right.
Like, that's the closest thing they did to doing any sort of honest reporting about, hey, look, everyone is fucking furious at this industry. Maybe that's the story. Maybe the story is actually why people, like, trying to get to the bottom of why people are happy that this happened. Maybe that's the most substantive part of this whole story, but no, that's not. We're just gonna run op-ed saying that Brian Thompson was a working class hero and that United Healthcare actually wants to fix the healthcare system. Get out of here.
Get out of here. We have some good news that we wanted to share.
It is the holidays, so we do want to give everyone a little gift, a bit of good news, and you might have seen this. And this is something that we've talked about on this very program. We've talked about the reality competition show Love is Blind. We've spoken about it because it, came out over the last few years that the contestants on that show have to work and live in absolutely deplorable working conditions, completely inhumane, completely exploitative. So the National Labor Relations Board has recently decided that Love is Blind contestants are, in fact, employees. So a little bit of background. The NLRB filed a complaint against the production companies, the creators of Love is Blind, taking the position that cast members are, in fact, employees covered by the National Labor Relations Act. The complaint said that Love is Blind creators intentionally misclassified cast members and subjected them to violations of their Section 7 rights. The show required cast members to sign an agreement depriving of their collective bargaining rights and directed them not to discuss any matters related to their employment, and not to discuss any matters related to their employment. And so now the NLRB has ruled that they are, in fact, employees. So so that'll come with its own set of rights. But I guess if the Love is Blind employees want to unionize, they could do that. I mean, I don't know how that would work since it's a season-to-season show with a rotating cast, but it's definitely a step in the right direction. Yeah.
Got to take the tiny wins when you get them. Big wins, if depending on like your proximity. That win for labor is always a big win. And I am watching The Ultimatum currently, which is a spin-off of Love is Blind.
Okay.
It's my favorite. It's wild. So maybe they'll get to become employees as well. But that was some of the news that we wanted to share.
This has been the discourse about reality competition cast members, and this isn't like an issue that is isolated to Love is Blind. This is something that has happened across industry. I think it was like Bethany Frankel, for one of the housewives, got like really, kind of made this one of her hobby horses like a year or so ago, just being like, yeah, they abused the shit out of us, the housewives, the producers of these shows. So it's definitely raising this issue into the consciousness, and there is movement on it. So that's good. Good. All
right. Well, we're going to get to our conversation today because it's holiday filled and juicy. But before we do, we would just like to remind you, our audience, that we don't sell ads on this show, even if they're, for good things. We're just not doing that kind of capitalism at all. We rely instead completely on community support to keep the show going. And you can help us do that by subscribing to our Patreon.
Yes, for just $5 a month, you get access to new bonus episodes and our entire back catalog of bonus episodes. And you can find our Patreon link in the episode description in your podcast player or at mvcpod.com. Also, please make sure to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast on your podcast player so you don't miss new episodes and so that other people can find the show.
Yeah. Also, a reminder that we donate our ad space. So if you are a part of a leftist or progressive organization and you would like to run an ad on this program, please email us at moviesversuscapitalism@gmail.com. That's moviesvscapitalism@gmail.com.
All right, we're going to take a break, but we'll be right back with our conversation about Miracle on 34th Street.
Hey everyone, we've got a great organization we want to tell you about called Theater Workers for a Ceasefire. They organize US-based theater workers in solidarity with the people of Palestine. The easiest campaign to plug into is the PAC-B working group.
Rivka, what is PAC-B?
Great question, Frank. It stands for the Palestinian Campaign for the Academic and Cultural Boycott of Israel. It's basically the cultural wing of the BDS movement. Since 2004, it has organized with partners globally to end all forms of cultural and academic complicity with apartheid Israel as the most meaningful form of pressure to compel it to comply with international law.
The working group meets every other week, and the goal is to enlist theatrical organizations to take up PAC-B's guidelines for divestment from Israel's genocide and occupation. It's open to anyone who lives in the U.S. and works in theater.
Theater Workers for a Ceasefire also hosts events in New York like teach-ins and organizes contingents for marches and protests.
You can learn more, join the group, or support their work at tw4c.com. Theater Workers for Ceasefire, tw4c.com, or find them on Instagram at Theater Workers for Ceasefire.
Love you, comrades. Now back to the show.
All right, we're here. It is Rivka and I for another Christmas duet. So we're going to just jump right in because you already heard us talk a little bit in the A block. Today, we are talking about the film Miracle on 34th Street, the 1947 version, the original. Mm-hmm. This film was directed by George Seaton, with a screenplay by George Seaton and story by Valentine Davies, starring Maureen O'Hara.
Just tough to say before you continue. Valentine, great name.
Oh, great name.
Let's bring it back.
Okay. Maybe someone will bring it back one day. Starring Maureen O'Hara, Edmund Gwenn, John Payne, Natalie Wood, Philip Tung.
Not as great. Not as great a name. Sorry, dude.
That's an unfortunate last name. Porter Hall, George Lockhart, and Jerome Cowan. The budget for this movie, and keep in mind, box office wasn't as closely tracked back in the 40s, but budget was approximately $248,000, and it grossed $2.7 million worldwide, and then, of course, went on to become one of the most famous Christmas movies, if not the most famous of all time. Mm. So if you've never seen this movie, like I had not, we will be spoiling it, but a brief synopsis, if you want a little refresher. A Miracle on 34th Street tells the story of Doris Walker, the event director for Macy's department store, and her young daughter Susan, who, after experiencing a traumatic family divorce, decide to become hyper-realists that never enjoy anything ever again. That is, until Doris hires a sweet old man named Kris Kringle to become the new Macy's Santa Claus, who through psychological subversion destroys the tenet of capitalist competition by directing toy-seeking parents to other department stores. Once the stunt becomes a PR boon, Kris Kringle's profile is raised throughout the city until some weaselly fuck tries to have him committed, leading to a sensationalized court hearing that will determine the definitive existence of Santa Claus.
That's so true. That's it.
That's for real, though. For real. That is what happens.
That is absolutely what happens. Released on June 11th, 1947. You heard that right. June 11th. This did not come out during the Christmas season.
Yeah, I was surprised to hear that, to learn
Apparently,
that.
it's because I think the producer was Zuckerberg. It was, what was it? It was 20th Century Fox. But basically, the studio had decided they didn't like the movie very much. And they said, anyways, people don't see movies at Christmas. They only go out to the movie theaters when it's warm.
Wow.
Yeah, we can discuss why potentially they didn't love this movie.
Huge L on that one.
So this is the first movie that we have covered from this year.
1947 is 2 years after the end of World War II. Harry Truman is the president of the United States. In January, Elizabeth Short, an aspiring actress nicknamed the Black Dahlia, is found brutally murdered in a vacant lot in Los Angeles. The case has never been solved. In February, Edwin Land demonstrates the first instant camera, his Polaroid Land camera, to a meeting of the Optical Society of America in New York City. Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
In April, Jackie Robinson signs with the Brooklyn Dodgers, not Los Angeles Dodgers, becoming the first African-American Major League Baseball player. Also in April, the first Tony Awards, recognizing achievement in American theater, are awarded at the Waldorf Astoria Hotel in New York City. Also in April, American financier and presidential advisor Bernard Baruch describes the post-World War II tensions between the Soviet Union and the United States as a Cold War. In July, a supposedly downed extraterrestrial spacecraft is reportedly found near Roswell, New Mexico. And in October, the House Un-American Activities Committee begins its investigations into communism in Hollywood. And in December, the Tennessee Williams play A Streetcar Named Desire opens on Broadway. Wow, what a year. 1947.
What a year. 1947. The 2024 of the 40s.
Yeah, and I believe, oh God, I don't know if my mom's going to listen to this episode, but I think this was, I have to double check. No, she was 48, so she's born the next year.
Who?
My mother.
Oh, lovely.
I was thinking about a lot of her and her generation during this watch. There's so much to discuss here. What a year. And Frank, pretty amazing this was your first watch. I mean, just because this, I think this is considered the one, like at least one of the, but like Wonderful Life and this is like the classic.
Yeah, the
American.
classics. So you chose this movie. I got to choose the last two. I mean, Evan kind of chose Home Alone. I kind of bullied him into it. But I did choose Scrooged for us to watch. But you chose Miracle on 34th Street. So why did you pick this Christmas classic?
I picked it because classic, and also just I had a feeling the themes, as I recalled them, would be quite on board with what we're doing and our project, and I was definitely right. And because I think it's just such a nostalgic, the Macy's Day Parade is like a huge part of my Christmas ritual, and just
Oh, really?
no, I mean I don't go. I'm not. Please,
Yeah. Well, you're a city kid. Did you ever go? Did you ever actually go in person?
I wouldn't go, but we had cousins who would fly into town. And they would sometimes get a hotel that could overlook. And they were like the fancy rich cousins. And it was like, so it felt very like, somehow it's tied to class and that like feeling of being like, I'm going with the rich cousins to do like rich people things. And mind you, it's like all Jewish too. Like, so it also is fascinating to me. I was thinking a lot about like, I felt like I had this feeling that this maybe is why, so like why my grandparents started celebrating Christmas was like a big part of my mom's growing up. Maybe this was like part of their assimilation as Jews into sort of the New York class and culture, and having been born and raised as immigrants, moving into sort of like my grandfather served in World War II, became a doctor. It was just like this felt like very much a part of this culture at the time. And so I felt like watching this movie, I was thinking about my mom a lot. And yeah, this fucking ultra capitalist moment that they disguise so well under like this facade of goodwill.
Yeah.
Thank you, Kris Kringle.
Getting the sales up.
Yeah, I wanted to reinvestigate all of that. And I remembered it being a good movie, and I think the screenplay rocks. Like, this is some of my favorite kind of writing from that time. I just think it's like solid writing. So I enjoyed it. Watched black and white, not colorized. Did you watch black and white or colorized?
No, I watched the black and white. Yeah.
So that was kind of a little bit of my thinking, and I wasn't disappointed. So I'm excited to jump in. But what was did you know the tale at all? Like, or did you go in totally blind?
I knew enough about
Yeah.
it. Just culturally, I had absorbed this story somehow through osmosis. even though I had never actually seen the movie. And I think I actively avoided it. I think anytime I saw it on television, I was like, black and white, fuck that. I did the same thing with Wonderful Life, honestly.
You're like, where's that Scrooge? I need that nuclear war scene.
give me more Bill Murray. These people in the 40s had no idea what they were doing. So even sitting down to watch it, I did have the feeling of, oh, this is going to be homework. Miracle on 34th Street.
Yeah.
Here we go. And almost instantly, I'm just swept away, completely swept away by this charming tale. Yeah, and like unsurprisingly, of course, this is an amazing movie. That's why it has stood the test of time. That's why they remade it in the 90s. I mean, I love the first half of the movie, all of the Macy stuff. I love how it subverted expectations. I didn't know where it was going. I knew basically that, you know, Macy's Santa or department store Santa may or may not be actual Santa. That's kind of all I knew in terms of the story. But I really loved how the first half completely subverted those expectations in terms of, you know, what his presence in the department store ends up doing, you know, how his, you know, essentially just good-natured and kind spirit ends up influencing sales policies at Macy's. I didn't know any of that. And then the whole court hearing, I didn't realize that was such a major part of the story, and I loved that shit. I mean, I love a courtroom drama. I love object, you're out of order, all that stuff. Just like prosecutors trying to get their guy, and the defense attorney who's always like, you know, like an Atticus Finch type who's just like, I'm going to be the good person here, who's going to speak for what's right. And so I just loved it. I thought it was so fun, very zany at times, but just so heartfelt and sweet. And, you know, we'll get into the politics of it. I'm sure we both think that, you know, this doesn't go as far with the class analysis, with the, you know, with the critiquing of the capitalist business framework that is depicted in this movie. But, you know, barely anything does that. So for what it is, I think it's pretty radical in some ways.
Yeah. I think when I view it as, because I read a few articles that were like, yeah, this is a satire. When you view it as like, yeah, this is complete satire in some ways, you're like, damn, says a lot. Like when you don't take it for face value. Now, I think a lot of people watching it, and I think what it became, and because it's so heartfelt, there's like, if you take it at face value, there can be sort of what like we were talking about with like the Christmas Carol-esque, like there can be a lot of being like, isn't goodwill and charity great? Like, it doesn't matter if they're using that as a way to like just sell more stuff. It's still if you sell things nicely, that's how we want nice capitalism, you know?
Exactly. Yes.
So I think watched that way, which is probably how a lot of people watch it. It's like, but the satire of it is so fat. It was so well done, and pretty, like you were saying, like pretty, especially with the courtroom stuff, which I think is the part that like I forgot that shit too, and is probably the part that most people it's harder to retain. But what it says about like how the legal system just like is there to protect, as we know, property and corporate interest. Mm-hmm. And in this case, what happens is in serving that mission, they end up protecting Kris Kringle, because he is at this moment like in the best interest of all corporations and like all capitalists selling shit around Christmas. Like, no, we're not gonna like make this man go away. He is the greatest salesman of all time.
He's the greatest salesman. Yes, he's the greatest salesman of all time, and obviously he wouldn't have such a robust defense if his policies didn't result in a higher profit margin for R.H. Macy. But also there's the, you know, the aspect that he's fucking Santa Claus. So the story, he's Santa Claus. He's a folk hero. I wanted to say, like, He's Kris. So he just has like this, like, he has the public on it. Like, you know, public sentiment is on his side entirely. And it just balloons into something that gets completely out of everybody's hands, which I love. I love watching all of these like stuffy lawyers and judges and, psych, what's his name? Sawyer, the in-house psychologist at Macy's, just like have this situation just completely get away from them. That stuff is so fun.
Before we get too far, I need your help. I need help just untangling and unpacking like the rules of Santa Claus in this world. Because is it true? This is what I got from the end. When at the very end, again, for anyone who hasn't seen it recently, Susan Walker, the child, played like the adult child, really played brilliantly.
Yeah.
By Natalie Wood. Like, holy fuck. Has there ever? I was like,
one of the best performances in the movie.
Oh my God. I was like, this is such good acting.
Yeah, really. I think her and Edmund Gwynn, who plays Santa, are the two best performances in the movie.
So she's like, as you brilliantly wrote in your synopsis, been sort of raised, parentified, if you will, a bit by her mother, who is just a pragmatist, a realist, in this portrayed like to the extreme. But she's like, yeah, I'm not really buying any of this. She's they're pretty polite about it. She's like, I don't really like, I'm not into the Santa stuff. And then Kris makes it his mission to convince her, which is kind of wild too. Like, that's his sole mission. I will convince this woman and her child. And so she shows him a picture of like, okay, he finally convinced, in a scene in her bedroom alone, by the way, like putting her to bed. Let's look at that. Like, door closed.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of fully grown adult men spending way too much one-on-one time with a small female child on their own without parental supervision. But that's yep.
And so he's like, come on, there must be something. And she's like, fine. She has this she's like, this house, which fucking good for her. Like, yes, balls to the wall. She's like, fine, you're Santa, get me a fucking house, bitch. Like, this house. And he's like, okay. And so the movie resolves where she's like, she believes him, and then she's like, he didn't get me my fucking house. Fuck him, there is no Santa. And her mom says some bullshit about faith, which I want to go back to because that was a big theme that I took issue with. But they're driving home, and Kris is like, take these very specific directions, wink, wink. And they drive past a home, and she's like, stop. And it's the house. And there's their for sale sign, and she runs in, and they're like running around. And then it ends with them seeing like Kris's
Cane,
thank you. He's like cane leaning. And so my question is this. He didn't buy them the house, right? He's not buying anyone any of these gifts, right? He's just telling people where to get them. Am I correct? And like when this dude is like, oh, I can't hang out, it's Christmas Eve. I'm like, what are you doing though? In the rules of the Santa world, because there's no elves mentioned. Like, this is very like, in some ways a little like really like real, like this is a real, we're meant to be like, this is real dude. My sense was like, this is the greatest salesman ever. And he's not even having to buy the house. Like, it was for sale. They're like, I guess we'll buy it. Like, that's crazy. Like, could you imagine like thinking about being a parent and being like, don't do that.
Don't direct my child to this house that she wants.
That I now have to buy and say it's you, right? Am I like, there was no, he didn't get anyone a gift. Like, we didn't see him get a single person an actual gift.
Well, we didn't see his actions on Christmas Eve. We have no idea what he did between the hours of, 6 p.m. and 6 a.m.
But normally you would see them wake up and be like this, and the parents being like, if they wanted to tell that story, the parents would have been like, where did this come? We didn't buy this. We didn't go to Gimbel's or Macy's. Like, there was never that moment. Like, I don't think he buys anyone anything.
I mean, he bought that X-ray machine for the doctor at the old folks' home.
Well, he says he's going to.
Yeah, he does. He comes in at the end and he says, he's like, Kris, in my medical and my professional and personal opinion, I do believe that you are Santa Claus.
But even he didn't, like, all I'm saying is, like, he schemed. That was his bonus. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was his bonus.
He, like, got them to.
I think they left it intentionally vague so that leaving the movie, you really could come down one way or the other. You could say, like, this is Santa Claus. There's no way there's no way this man has the knowledge of the toy stock of every single department store in New York City on hand, committed to memory, that he's able to achieve, that he's able to find this house in this ad that this little girl gave him and find it and arrive there or set up her mom and Gailey to find it at the end. There's so many things he does in this where I'm like, that is beyond the realm of what like a sweet old man is capable of. But
absolutely. But my point is like what you're saying, even if that's like because that was like the extent of his superpowers, right? Like think about that superpower. You're like, your superpower is like you are the all-time real estate agent. Like you are like your superpower is not procuring, making, crafting, delivering gifts. It is, like you said, having this wild knowledge of all of the inventory of all of these corporations and real estate agencies. Like he's the ultimate. I mean, what an amazing, like what a capitalist vision.
Yeah.
Truly.
You're absolutely right. It works within this framework of this story is saying, you know, capitalism is going to exist, but let's try to make it as altruistic as possible. Truly. I mean, that's the message of the movie. And it's also not surprising because of the time this came out. I mean, we just read the House Un-American Activities Committee just started up. Like this is the second Red Scare kicking off. You cannot challenge the system. You cannot question capitalism. If you do, you are a red commie and you are un-American and you're a traitor. So the closest you can get to some sort of radical critique in mainstream entertainment at this time is just saying, but what if we're all just a little bit nicer when we do it? You know, it's
and a cheeky little satire, because it's so like they could have made Santa even better. Like that's all I'm getting at is like they could have made him like truly altruistic, and I'm like they chose not to even make him like bring a single person a gift. No, he didn't bring any person a gift. I was expecting some scene where there was, you know, some like undeniable magic that he had conjured of some kind, you know, like someone wakes up one morning and they're like, oh, this gift. And the parents are like, we didn't fucking get that gift. Where did that gift come from? Like I was fully expecting that. He's not even a craftsman. No, the elves are the craftsmen. Right, but he's not even like, I just love the choice that he's just, that it was so lacking. It made me lean into like, I like to believe there was some sort of like, there is a satire there. Because I'm just saying they could have made it more altruistic with him being more of a typical Santa who usually has a bit more skill. Sure. Yes, your point is taken. Look, I don't think he's going to, like, I don't think it would make sense for him to be buying all of the gifts because that's kind of, I don't know, that's just not the story that they were telling. Also, I don't think Santa is that liquid, you know? I don't think he has that much cash on hand. He's not working in a cash business. No, he lives at an old age home and he definitely lives at an old age home. We know this. It's brilliant. But I just wanted to make sure I was correct on that there's not a single moment, even at the end, where he does anything other than basically be an agent for industry. Yeah. You're not right. Look, if we're following the logic of the film, then he probably is just a sweet old man he's like the Wolf of Wall Street of the toy industry, you know, just like the most unbelievable salesman, can get anyone to buy anything. In which case too, like AI is coming after you, Kris. Like AI's got your job done. Sure. You mean just like, where can I find this thing? Oh, it's over here. It's on Amazon now. If literally what he's doing is like, I just have this wild knowledge of where everything is and you want that home, I know who's selling it. I mean, that's valuable industry knowledge, you know? Okay, we got that cleared up. Let's jump into more of the themes. I want to go back to the beginning. I was a little thrown by the first 10, 15 minutes. I loved all of the Kris Kringle stuff because that's the first thing we get. You know, he's telling the guy in the window, like, oh, you've got the reindeers in the wrong places. And that happens. And then he snitches on drunk Santa, which I didn't love. I didn't love that either. I made a note. I was like, really? I also wrote a note that was like Capricorn boss. Like, he's got to be a Capricorn. He's so bossy. just like the nerve to be like, you're doing that wrong. Like he's just like walking around like, that's wrong. But he's so good natured in the way that he does it. He's like, I'm sorry to bother you. No, you're not open yet, but I just wanted to let you know that the reindeer are in the wrong places. He's not so good-natured with the guy who's just trying to stay cold, stay warm.
With drunk Santa? No.
Yeah.
Could have been a little bit more compassionate. Yes. There were a few moments, if we're going to really debate whether or not this was actually Santa Claus, there were a few moments that I was like, I don't think Santa would fucking do that. Yeah, not my Santa.
Yeah, not my Santa.
Yeah, he could have shown a little bit more compassion to the drunk. He had no idea what that guy was going through. In fact, if he was Santa, he would know what that guy was going through. He'd be like, Marvin, I'm so sorry that Linda left you, but this isn't the answer, or something like that.
Or giving him a gift. Give him some, again, he's just like, coal for you. Get the fuck out of here.
So that was all fun. But then we meet Doris Walker and her young daughter, Susan, at their apartment. Lovely apartment. First thing in the movie, I was like, no, fuck this, was all of the introduction to Mr. Gailey, who is their neighbor. He's the male lead, John Payne. He's the handsome guy across the way. And he is purposely hanging out with little Susie just to try to get with Mrs. Walker. And it's played for laughs. There's even the little bit of Susie invites him over for dinner, and then she's like, did I ask the right way? So creepy.
Ooh,
yeah,
so
and at
creepy.
some point, Doris says oh, what a horrible trick. And I felt like I saw a little bit on Maureen O'Hara's face when he tells her I kind of just hanging out with your daughter because I wanted to meet you. I feel like I saw a glimmer of her being like, I don't feel safe now.
You shouldn't, babe. You should not. You also should not have been letting your daughter hang out with someone you'd never met.
And I know that this is just I don't know, we're in the 40s. It's cool when men trick women into dating them. This is still societally acceptable, but that really rubbed me the wrong way.
But what's interesting about this dynamic is that this is actually Doris Walker's considered kind of a leading, an early feminist role, because it's one of the first times you see an unmarried woman on screen.
Oh, sure.
Who's a professional woman who, granted, has her shit together, at least in the way that society values.
Yeah.
You have your shit together. And yet, when you really dig deep, you're the messaging is, though, that she might have all that together, but she's probably, they don't say it, but I read it as she's taking on too much of the male perspective. She needs a man so that she can have faith again.
Yeah.
In some ways, because he's because he says to her, he's the one who's oh, you we're led to believe that the reason, you said in the synopsis, she's such a pragmatist and realist is because her heart was broken in this terrible divorce. So now she just won't let her daughter have any imagination. That's an extreme case.
I didn't read it as you need a man to fix this and make you, more. Well,
that's what he thinks, because when he sees her, he's oh, I have to be the one to make sure that I'm going to have Kris Kringle live at my house. And I'm going to interfere in this woman's life because A, like you pointed out, I want to be with this woman. I'm already preying on her.
Mm-hmm.
And B, because I think he's also on the side of you don't believe you don't have any belief.
I think it develops into that. I think it develops into Gailey being hey, you need to bring more love and joy and faith into your life. But I think that's, at least for me on this first watch, felt like a development even in his character. Because when we meet him, he's just kind of this boring ass lawyer. It's not until...
Well, his first thing with her, though, the daughters, remember, he's telling her stories. He's tells her some story and she's
oh, that's right. Yeah.
I don't believe that shit, dude. And he's a little bit huh, you're not allowed to you don't believe any stories? And
that's true.
Frankly, he's right. He is right. It's a little much.
It is coded of this guy is going to be the dude who helps balance the scales for you and gets you back to, feeling happy and having faith and having imagination and allowing your daughter to be a child. So yeah, you're right. That's baked in there. I guess just maybe the presence of Kris Kringle also kind of adds a layer to that, which he is so that is purely his id, is just spreading cheer and love and hope and faith and possibility. So,
and sales.
And
but yeah. while we're talking about faith, this was another big theme that I thought was like tricky, because the end of the movie, yeah, like as we're saying, it's their whole journey is towards like, Kris is like, I'm gonna make these two believe, you know, it doesn't matter anything else, but like I'm so sad if they don't believe that I'm Santa Claus. And at the end, for not the clearest like reasoning, other than like, I guess the pressure of like everybody else believes he's Santa Claus. Like there's not real tangible, there's nothing material that they can be like, this is why you are now Santa. Like you were saying, he brings gifts. It's left pretty vague, like as to why they believe he's Santa. They're just like, the court says he won a court case.
Yeah.
So I guess he is Santa. We're going to choose to believe. But she says at the end to her daughter, when she's like, Mommy, I thought I believed, but like I didn't get my house, which truly really important critical thinking. Like she's doing good critical thinking. And I guess this is my biggest critique, is like, particularly when you look at like a Marxist worldview that's based in like critique of the real material circumstance, and there's always contradiction in there, but like, what do I see? Like that's a really good thing I actually think Susan's got something going that she can look and be like, yeah, this is what I see. This is the real thing. And she says like, well, he said he was going to give me a house. There's no house. So yeah, I'm kind of bummed. I don't believe. And her mom, who's been like turned around by really her bosses, like it's all working out business wise. She's still part of this class, gets won over, and she says, faith is believing in things when common sense tells you not to. And I just thought that's a really fucking dangerous ideology. I was like, no, this is bad. No, Susan, this is very, very bad. And this is very, very like core to capitalism.
Yeah.
What a great, like, this is what the movies, like, what a great, yeah, believe in things when, fuck your common sense.
Just have faith in the system. Just have faith that it's all going to work out, that the people in charge are doing the right thing for you.
We know your healthcare is not, like, we know that your lived experience and all of material reality is telling you this healthcare system is not working out for you, but we're here to tell you, no, your basic human needs are met by the system as is. Like, have faith and it will work out.
Yes, it's a dangerous sentiment when extended to any other realm of your life other than, I don't know, believing in fucking Santa Claus. Like if you want to believe in Santa Claus, there's no harm in that. But if you want to like blithely believe that everything's going to work out and it doesn't require any sort of personal work or interpersonal organizing of any kind, yeah, you're right. That is a dangerous sentiment.
Which is like, but they are extending it essentially. Like, what I love about this movie is like it's clear that Santa is not separate from the political system, the corporate system. Like, Santa's in all of it. Like, they're all getting off. They're all making use of this ideology that Santa peddles. And don't get me wrong, like, I love keeping up the lie. But it's like, we all know, like, once you wake up and you're like, great, it's like, you're like, yeah, I see how wild that is that we do that. Like, you know, and I love it. And I think it's fun, but like, parents, when your kid comes of age, you can have this discussion where you can be like, faith is like, that's not my definition of faith, is not like we pulled a prank on you. That's what happened.
So how would you define faith?
I think faith is, I think faith has a lot to do with common sense and has actually a lot to do with material reality and a lot to do with, like, I find my faith in the things that I see and experience, and I can build on that. And I think I can have a hope and a belief built on visions of, like, desires I would have based on experience. You know, like, we experience certain things now. I have a faith that it is possible for us to have like, you know, a communist horizon, have a place where, like, a world in which we can live differently. But that's also because I've witnessed it in small ways, and also like a real lived experience of what doesn't work. You know, I don't think
Sure.
faith is like the opposite of common sense or critique, which I think was so great that she like that Susan had instilled. Like, there's nothing wrong with like critical thinking unless you're like, please don't do that. It's like the aliens in the sky right now, you know? It's like, please don't have any critical thinking about our healthcare system. Look, aliens. Like, that's Santa. It's kind of like, you might as well be like, Santa's in the sky. Like, it's the same shit.
Watch they fucking release Santa on Christmas Eve this year. Straight up, like the Pentagon just like launches a drone sleigh into the sky, led by just like 9 autonomous reindeer. Yeah, they're trying their hardest to distract us. I think it's all totally valid, but also to be accepted from a kind of simplistic story like this, and especially one told strictly within a capitalist framework. We are not looking outside of this framework. We are not trying to build something different than this framework. It's firmly existing within it.
Yeah. And it makes so much sense why like this boomer generation that was raised on this particular idea then created a politic. And like so often says to the left, like, that's idealistic, you know, that's crazy, but then like is actually the one peddling these things that you're like, common sense, like,
yeah,
don't look at what we're doing, listen to what we're saying. So
on this note, I want to talk about the Macy's of it all and Santa's gambit here. It really threw me for a loop. I did not think that. I thought it was gonna be more of like a magical realism kind of thing, like he conjures up toys or like something, like he is Santa. But the whole just directing Macy's customers to other department stores, I thought was so funny, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. I love the way that it upended literally Macy's entire business model, and then Macy's and Gimbel's start getting into this nice competition, like who can be the nicest department store, who can help out their competition the most. I thought that all was so fun and silly. Also, the moment with the little Dutch girl brought me to tears a little bit. I mean, like I wasn't weeping, but so sweet. And I was like, this motherfucker's about to start speaking Dutch, isn't he? And then he does. And it's so cute. But yeah, I thought it was very, what stuck out to me is that obviously this type of sales policy would not fly if it did not result in massive profit margin. Although they don't really say like we're making more money than ever. Maybe they do down the line.
I think they kind of do. I think it's implied in the way Mr. Macy and the way all the capitalist class responds.
Yes, it's implied. They're definitely getting an outpouring of public support. So like just people are enamored by this policy. The fact that this capitalist enterprise could possibly think of the public welfare rather than their profit margins. And I did appreciate how that was underlined multiple times throughout the movie. I think it's when Santa's talking with Alfred the janitor, who, what a sweetheart. That sweet teenage boy. They're talking about Santa's given the list of overstocked toys to sell, and Santa says something like, everyone's getting away from the meaning of Christmas. It's all about commercialism. And Alfred says, it's one of the worst isms out there is commercialism. Make a buck. I did appreciate that, how they were, even in this time, even in the 40s, were saying, hey, because you have to imagine a lot of the, I don't know, anti-robber baron sentiment is still left over and lingering from the 20s and 30s. So I appreciated how they, were saying like, yeah, these companies only fucking care about money. Like, and that sucks. And it's detrimental to the rest of us. So I like that. I like how they kind of underscored that with this whole Santa's directing customers to go, buy with the competition.
I mean, it's such a great flip of like, oh, that's such a great idea. Of course, capital is going to take it over and make a goodwill policy, and like it's gonna, and just expand on it. Like, I love that. I love that we see.
Yeah, because it serves their bottom line.
he can't help it, but it's like a politician with like good faith who's like, I'm going in, I'm going to change the system from one end. They're like, yeah, you are. Yeah, you are. Great idea. Do you want to work for us? And I love how they do that. They're like, we're going to give you a bonus. We're going to we just want to make this guy happy because his goodwill is serving us. Unfortunately, Santa didn't have, as you mentioned at the top, he didn't have enough ability to see what was going on and then say, oh, based on the consequences of these actions, I think I'm only helping the commercialization and I have to remember my initial project. But I imagine that's really hard for Santa if he himself is not crafting any toys and does not actually have a place from which, like, he's not a third party, right? Like, he doesn't have the alternative answer. Because, like, as we've discovered, he's just a salesman. It would have really benefited him to be like, you don't need Gimbals or Macy's. I got you. Because in the North Pole.
Okay, I got all these fucking elves.
And they actually own the means of production and the factory. So it's all good. I represent them. I mean, I like that he's like, he hits, I mean, we don't like this psychologist and we should get into talking about him, but he does whack him with a cane to the point where he has a giant, I mean, this man has been he has a giant bump on his head.
Yeah, he's been assaulted. Yeah. That was the other moment. That's the other moment where I was like, Santa wouldn't fucking do that. Santa would not hit this man on the head. No chance.
Which is really disturbing if you go back and you review it and there's an alternate viewing where you're like, no, this is not Santa. You just let a really crazy person in a room alone with your daughter running wild. All because he served your boss's capitalist ideals. But this man hits people. This man is actually a loose cannon. Like,
he does have latent maniacal tendencies, it turns out.
This man puts North Pole on his work information. Like, you have no information for this man.
You do not know where he came from. No.
This is when common sense is helpful.
I did, but that was actually a moment, and I don't know how intentional it was, but that was kind of the moment where, like, the capitalists showed their ass in this movie, was the debate between Shellhammer and Doris and Sawyer of, yo, this guy is probably mentally unwell. We don't know where he came from. We have no information on him. We don't know who he is. He thinks he is someone else. By all the evidence in front of us, he is a deluded old man. But he's making us so much money, and we have to allow him to just be around children all day long. Like, that debate that is happening.
It makes me furious. It actually makes me furious, as you just said it, framed it in that way. It's and that is it. They don't give a fuck.
They don't fucking care. They're like, I mean, there's the little bit, I mean, like,
put these children on his lap. Like, get the fuck out of here.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But this is also, you got to keep in mind, this is the 40s. Like, these Santas are not getting vetted. No one's doing background checks. God knows how many department store Santas did horrific shit back in the day. I liked how that, I don't know if they meant for it to be, I don't know if, like, the screenwriter and director meant for that debate to be a critique of the profit motive and how it will and how people who run these businesses are incentivized to make dangerous, harmful choices if it means that it will maintain or grow their profit margin. I don't know if they were intentionally doing that, but they ended up doing that in the movie, and I was like, that's the realest shit in this movie, is some people debating whether this fucking stranger should be allowed around tens of thousands of children.
I feel like I'd like to think they were, because the writing is so smart. And I do think, as you mentioned, this is an era of, like, the beginning of the McCarthy hearing, like the Red Scare stuff. And, like, this was an era of really smart writers who were Trojan horsing a lot of shit, a lot of political messaging.
Sure.
And it is so clear. Like when you listen, you're like, there's no, it's pretty fucking clear what that debate is. And it's very clear that the politicians are like to the judge, like, I don't give a fuck about your justice. Like, You do what's right for corporate power. Sales are up. You're not going to ruin this. Oh, yeah, by the way, the kids believe. But, like, mostly it's because sales are up.
Yeah.
And we don't want to ruin that. You know, like, they're very clear about it. So I like to think... And this actually leads me to, I read about the let's talk about the role of the psychologist, because I think that's a really...
Very interesting. That's
in there. It's like they... And actually, in the movie that they do, the 90s one, that storyline's completely changed, and it's like a pissed off Santa who's the antagonist, like someone, like a pissed off store Santa, and there's no like in-store psychologist. But I think it's really interesting that like the role of psychiatrics in corporate power to like manipulate and scare workers, like fucked up. And I read in an article that actually like this was a big thing that would happen. This was an article, should link it. I didn't write down what it was from here, but they referenced the fact that like these kind of psych examinations were actually things that businesses adopted after World War I, and they were being used by employers to quote unquote better workers' mental health, but it was actually a way to stave off like labor unrest, because they could argue that quote, people who advocated for labor unions were people who were unsettled and neurotic themselves.
Oh, that's unsurprising.
So I have to think the writers had that's a very pointed antagonist to include, like that Santa has, and Santa, he pisses Santa off.
Yeah, and Santa pisses him off. I loved like the role switch in their first psych eval where Santa is just reading this guy and being like, "Oh, you bite your nails," and he's like plucking his eyebrows or whatever, and he's like, "You seem a little anxious, a little worked up. Is everything all right at home?" You just fucking calls this guy out, and just based on that, this guy's like, "Well, now I hate this Santa, and I am going to destroy him." But I mean, at least for me, I kind of took it as, I think the labor union aspect of that is very interesting. I did not know that. But on its face, it's kind of just a reminder that, you know, even people with medical degrees, with psychological degrees, psychiatric degrees can still be completely ideologically biased and operate based on their own personal motives or intentions. This guy honestly made me think of Jordan Peterson, you know, a man with however many degrees, PhDs, whatever, and is clearly a very smart person, but has the most brain-rotted, disgusting, hateful ideology that he uses his intellectual acumen to then reinforce rather than deconstruct.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in a workplace where it just makes you think about that. I know people who are in workplaces where mental health is offered, and on its face, you're like, that's really great. It should be. But it's also, I know people are always concerned about it. Even in my work with like getting to know bits about how the NYPD works, it's like there's a reason that also it's not a culture of talking to people, but B, of course you're going to be like, I know we have confidentiality, quote unquote, but like you're paid for by my employer.
Yeah, you're going to write a report of some kind.
What is your motive? What is your motive here? Like, it's very concerning. And then, so what really sets Santa off in this is when Alfred's going to him, the sweet Alfred, and he's being told, like, you know, people who want to be Santas, something really bad happened to them in their childhood. Like, they're trying to
atone for some sort of guilt that they have.
Deeply manipulative, and so then Kris goes and assaults the dude.
And it's not like Sawyer didn't have it coming. Although you should never lay hands on someone, even if they are absolutely Weasley prick. But I liked how that storyline was threaded through. All right, let's talk about the court hearing, because this is essentially the second half or third act of the movie. I loved this shit. So Sawyer is trying to get Santa committed. The an assistant prosecutor in the DA's office of the state of New York is getting involved in the commitment. He's the one that is in charge of like doing the commitment, getting the judge to sign the papers. Mr. Gailey comes through. He's going to be Kris Kringle's lawyer. And so we think that this is going to be a court case to debate the sanity of this man and whether or not he is just like a threat to other people. But the moment that Mr. Gailey says, I intend to prove that Mr. Kringle is Santa Claus, I fucking guffawed out loud. I was like, I did not know this is where we were going. I love this. Give me some courtroom jargon, machination bullshit about how this man is actually Santa Claus. And I just loved everywhere we went.
Yeah, and the whole thing that wins him over is like the heroic postal service. Like these two dudes who ultimately are like, why the fuck are we dealing with all this fucking mail? You know, this guy, supposedly they got Santa at the courthouse. Let's just send it there. And then they use that because of a loophole. I had noticed, I was like, this is the craziest case ever, but this is how the it just also exposes how bullshit the legal system is. Like, they're like, yep, because so you agree that like the postal service represents the United States, like it's a
it's a branch of the federal government.
It's a branch of the federal government, and they said that Santa's here because they sent the mail here. So
so it turns out this dude is Santa. Well, the other aspect of the court is Judge Harper, who holds an elected position as the judge of whatever this, district court of New York is. And the tension with his character is that he is going to be up for re-election soon. And he does not want to be the guy who puts Santa Claus away. He doesn't want to be the guy that rules that Santa doesn't exist, that puts Santa in a mental institution. So I thought that was brilliant, that his motives were purely self-interested. It had nothing to do with altruism. It had nothing to do with the carriage of justice. It was purely, I'm trying to get fucking reelected next year, and I can't, people are going to know me as like the guy who put Santa in jail, and I can't have that. I thought that was a really smart layer that they added in.
It's also wild that like this is that even Santa's on trial. Like at the end of the day, who fucking cares about this guy? It's like watching Luigi be on trial. Like we're like, okay, sure, but like, can United Healthcare be on fucking trial? Like, can Macy's be on trial? Why is this dude like? If we believe what we believe, which is common sense tells us this is not Santa. Common sense tells us this is a man who is a nice dude, like who needs a little help, or just like, let him be nice, let him be a salesman, let him whatever. But like, why do we need to put this man in Bellevue? I mean, you don't go to Bellevue for like for one whack on the head. That's the issue. This is also like an issue of like, this is like, why is this a court case?
Yeah, no, I mean, I thought if anything, Sawyer should be on trial for like
malpractice.
Yeah, malpractice, abusing the legal system, abusing the mental health system to just purely to satiate his purely vengeful attitude towards Kris Kringle. Yeah, no, it's like a ridiculous conceit, and I loved all of the like, calling up the prosecutor's son to testify.
Yeah. But shit that like happens all the time in real, like you're like, this is ridiculous, but it's very accurate.
Does it?
This, like, I feel like this manipulation. Yeah, I do. I feel like there's so many cases where you're like,
this level of showmanship.
Yeah, it's all showmanship. And like you said with the judge, like decisions being made based on re-election, based on politics, not based on anything about justice. The fact that like the way the legal system works, you're like, I don't understand why this person's on trial. Like defamation hearings that are so insane. And you're like, what? The fuck are we, like, Johnny Depp gets to sue Amber Heard? Like, what are you taught? Like, and now he gets to make it a media circus. Just all these loopholes that just feel really accurate. Like, I would not be surprised. I clearly watch a lot of court TV, but like you see this happen where you bring kids up to the stand all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Just fucked up too, like to bring this kid in front of his like
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Be like, well, he believes.
My daddy told me so.
Okay.
Yeah. No, it's it doesn't do the justice system any favors, this movie. It's not a glowing.
No, it's satire. It's brilliant. You're like, this is it.
Everyone is just concerned. The judge is concerned with re-election. Macy, when he gets called up, is just thinking of the newspaper headlines of, Macy says Santa is not real. All these people are just completely self-interested, either by their own status, their position, their power, or their money. And because he is Santa and everyone is on his side, they're like, I guess we got to let this unwell person continue hanging out with all of our kids, I guess. Because of...
And that happens all the time. Like, I just mean in the sense that, like, that's just happens more often than you would, where you're just like, oh, that person is allowed to be there because they serve a corporate interest and nobody cares that they're harming a whole bunch of people, be it children, be it anyone else below them.
Not at all. I mean, like, if you've read anything about the pardons and commutations that Biden has been doing over the last few weeks, you're like, oh, okay, so just fuck the legal system. Fuck some, forget it. Some of the worst crimes, criminals, most disgusting people who have been rightfully prosecuted and convicted of just awful crimes. Like, one of the guys from the children prison system in Pennsylvania that we talked about in Capitalism, A Love Story, the Michael Moore movie, which we covered.
In Fury, I'm so angry.
One of those guys got a fucking commutation. The dude who was literally making money off of forcing children into prison. Biden was like, we gotta let that guy, we gotta let that guy out. We gotta help him out a little bit. Like,
because you want to know what? Biden has faith. Biden don't need to believe in common sense. Biden gets to ignore that.
Unbelievable. Yeah, no justice in the justice system.
Unbelievable. One thing that we did learn recently at a dinner with dear friend Harvey K is that Macy's employees are actually unionized.
That's right.
They're represented by the United Food and Commercial Workers. And I actually, one of my uncles worked for Macy's for a while. And yeah, I hear it's...
I might be right in recalling that Elizabeth Warren's mother also worked at Macy's. I feel like definitely some department store. I remember hearing that in, like one of her pitch about like her childhoods and, whatever. But I think if I'm recalling correctly, she was like, yeah, my mother worked at Macy's. It was a union job. And she was like, between her and my father were able to buy a house, raise all of us children, put us through school. Like that, you could do that back then with a good union job.
Yeah. Which union jobs, all that's great. I don't want to get into the trap of, which I think movies like this do, and all of the Christmas tales really, of like, we just need good capitalists.
Exactly.
Moral capitalism. Like, no, fuck that. Macy, it would be much better. The next step is like, let all those employees who are putting in the labor own that shit.
Yeah.
But we're not there. So at least they're unionized. And maybe, I didn't do any research on this. Maybe it has to do with this movie right here. Maybe Kris Kringle got them unionized. He said he had a talking to with Mr. Macy. Said, oh, we're going to let them have a union.
Yeah, because he was like, if you let the workers unionize, they'll do even better work for you, and your profit margins will go up even higher. You must trust me on this, RH. It's in your best interest.
Could you imagine how annoying would he be to be around all the time? Like, he's cool for a little bit.
Santa? Kris Kringle?
I'm not going to call him Santa. Okay, I'm an adult. I'm a fucking adult.
Yeah, Chris
from the old chump.
I don't know. I would just sit there be picking his brain. Just be like, what other languages do you got? Like, what else?
Yeah, that'd be like a day. But this man is like, you can stay in what is he? He's like, I have a double bed. I have 2 single beds. So they're like sleepovers.
Yeah, I have 2 twin beds that are right next to each other.
Sleepover. So, Chris doesn't go to bed. He's up talking all night.
No, he's singing fucking Christmas carols. He's like,
No, he's like, now play, imagination. Like when he does that scene where he's like, you have the French nation, butchering the line. He's like, you have the French nation, the Russian nation, you have the imagination. I'm like, great. Way to like make imagination a fucking...
You're just reinforcing the state, Kris.
Yeah. And then he like gets her up to play and she's like playing that, but he's not playing with her, which is some of the worst ways to like actually invoke imagination. Like it's the worst sort of like way to get a child to play into imagination. Like he plays a little with her, but he's very he's again bossy ass Capricorn. And I can say this, y'all, because I am a Capricorn, but he's like very like, okay, no, you're doing it. You forgot to do this. You forgot. I'm like, dude, I thought imagination was like what you're imagining. Oh, now she's imagining wrong.
Yeah.
She's pretending wrong. Get out of here, Kris. I see you. It's manipulative, really.
It is.
But that's how, you're doing that wrong. Call me Santa. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, him and Gailey like make a pact together. They're like, you work on the mother, I'll work on the daughter. Like, the fuck? Get out of these women's lives, you creeps. Both of you.
So sick. So sick.
All right. Did you have anything else you wanted to hit before we go to the awards?
I think we covered it. My first note, I will say, of the movie was Ben Nye! ! Which, for those of you who...
Oh, Ben Nye, the makeup brand.
Ben Nye, the makeup brand. He was the makeup artist on the film.
No shit.
So for those of you who didn't go to theater, didn't have the pleasure of going to theater school and taking makeup class where they said, oh, no, you have to buy Ben Nye, who was like, the theatrical and movie makeup person forever. Not really, like, didn't make sense why in the new millennial we had to be using this makeup, but they were like, you're not a real actor until you know how to put on your own prosthetic nose.
I mean, it is a pretty comprehensive makeup kit. It does have all of the basics. It has all the shades that you need. It even has latex and fake blood.
Yeah, if you want your skin to break out like in 5 seconds. It's like it's crazy.
Yeah, it's like cake icing for sure.
It's wild, yeah. And you would just...
I think I still have my Ben Nye.
It was just always like, it would just always end up being people do things really anti-Semitic nose. Like you would just be like, why are we all putting on these anti-Semitic? Like what is going on in this 1940s makeup class? But classic, epic, amazing. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I was actually pretty good at makeup.
Maybe for our premiums, we'll pull out some.
I think I have some photos of my makeup from that makeup class deep somewhere. Maybe it was fun.
It was very fun. But we had to buy Ben Nye, and it was not cheap, as I recall.
Definitely not cheap. No.
Yeah. So that was just a tidbit. And the other thing, like, I also just noted the smoking in front of children.
Into their faces. Smoking
in bed. So they were just like smoking in their... I mean, so interesting. Yeah, what a time. And I think I said this to you. I predict that we are... with the trad wife phenomenon, the leaning to the right, I'm like, just wait. Soon it's going to be like, you're pregnant? Throw back a few martinis. Have a cigarette. It's good for you. I just think that's where we're headed.
I mean...
And I'm not opposed.
I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone on this podcast, but definitely some people's mothers here may or may not have smoked during pregnancy, so...
And you're just fine.
And yeah, just turned out just fine. All right, let's do these awards. We have 3 awards that we give to our movies. Our first award is Best Politics, goes to the character with the best politics in the movie.
I'm going to say Susan Walker.
Oh, okay.
Natalie Wood, because she holds as strong as she can to the end to like the ideology that I think is the best use of seeing the world, which is like...
To critical thinking, yeah.
Yeah, she at least holds... Her mom gives out before she does. And her mom has already been tainted a little because I think she serves Mr. Macy ultimately. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to give it to Natalie Wood's character.
I think that's right. I would have maybe said Mr. Gailey, the lawyer, because he does, help Santa out of the goodness. He quits his job just to help this man who doesn't deserve to be committed to Bellevue. Like, let's just say that. But I hesitate to give it to him because of how much of a creep he was at the beginning.
And he could have chosen to make the argument that, like, not this is Santa, but rather this is cruel. Like, to do this to someone, can we look at the mental health system?
Sure.
why are we putting this man in Bellevue?
Actually, you know what? You know who it is? It's Alfred. It's Alfred the janitor.
Tell me why.
Or at least because he is not down with commercialism, as he says.
Oh, yeah,
One of the worst isms. and he loves being Santa. He's like, it just makes me feel good and important. Like,
He's the real Santa.
He's the real Santa. He's like, I like doing nice things. Doing nice things makes me feel good, you know? And it's not extended into like some sort of coherent politics other than the commercialism part. And then he shows up at the courthouse. And there's that really sweet, really short moment where just like, it's like the second or third day of the hearing and he shows up and he's just like, hi, Kris. And Kris is like, Alfred. And like, that's a good kid.
He's a good guy.
Good kid.
Good. Yeah. And maybe
It could go to both of them though.
and I'll save this I'll save this for another category. I have some thoughts, but it could go to both of them. Absolutely. All right. Worst politics. Who are we giving it to? I feel like I've laid out a good case for Kris Kringle.
For Kris Kringle.
I don't know. I know he says one thing. I know on the face we think that his politic is out of the kindness of his heart. He really doesn't. He's anti-commercialization of Christmas. And he seems anti-capitalist on the surface, but
no, because he's reinforcing it.
Yeah, dude, and you must be aware of what's happening. Like, I'm not buying that and he's not played this way. He's not played like just some super sweet, just old guy. He's not, as we said, he assaults people. He gets frustrated and he's kind of bitter too, a little bit. So
yeah,
I may give it to him.
It could go to him. The other nominee would be Mr. Shellhammer, who's like the GM of Macy's or whatever, but he's the one that's really pushing the whole, look, I know this guy might be dangerous, but we are making so much money. You know, I mean, you could make the case for R.H. Macy, but R.H. Macy doesn't even know about the, Kris being potentially mentally unwell thing. So he's just going off of like, hey, we're making money. This seems to be working. Let's go. Shellhammer is fully aware of the situation and is still pushing for this man to be around children.
No, you're right. It's got to be him because he's enacting he's looking the harm in the face and saying, let's do it. Let's because if it's true, which I believe it is, that Kris is not mentally fully well or there, or we don't even know enough about him to trust what he's doing with all this power. Mm-hmm. That dude says, cool, we don't care. It's working for capital.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you.
Okay, Mr. Shellhammer. And our last award, Better Supporting Character. This goes to the supporting character that this movie should actually be about.
I mean, so Alfred, as we discussed, is a darling. I would like to see the movie where Alfred is actually radicalized after this, and maybe he's the reason that Macy's gets unionized.
Oh, yes. He absolutely is. He's the only other like rank and file employee that we meet in this movie. Mm-hmm. Everyone else is management of some kind.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's a good one. I would really like to see what's going on, and this isn't really like a better supporting character, but I would like to see what's going on at the old folks home on Great Neck the other 364 days of the year. Like, what the fuck is Kris up to there? What is he doing? What is going on? Like, how is he living the rest of the year when it's not Christmas time? What's up with this doctor?
How annoyed is everyone else with him?
How annoyed is everyone else with him? What's up with this doctor who seems like a nice guy, but when you like actually think about it for a second, you're like, wait a minute.
You're in on it.
You're also saying like, yeah, let this guy around the kids. It's fine. He's sweet. He's not a harm to anybody. He's gonna be fine.
Your proof of that is what, sir? Didn't have any. Just faith vibes.
Just ignoring common sense and going with my faith. Wow, Riv, this was fun. This was a good one.
This was fun. This was solid. I mean, I'll show my kids this movie.
Absolutely. I'm curious to watch the 90s one. Is it any good? Is it like a worthwhile remake?
I don't remember it fully, but I do think, and from what I read, it loses any of the kind of socialist peaking satirical stuff, and it goes full on 80s, 90s, like, yeah, we love capitalism. This is about Santa loves capitalism. You love it too.
Got it. All right. Well, maybe next year.
Maybe not. Yeah, we'll do it next year. I could be totally wrong, but because I haven't watched it in a while. But this is a classic. Go watch it if you haven't seen it, or if it's your favorite. And happy holidays, everyone.
Let's all go to the lobby.
We're going to be taking a break the next few weeks for the holiday and for New Year's, but we will be back in 2025 with a new movie, and that will be Rogue One, a Star Wars story.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.